Okay, last it's two dots. Is 5 lines to the bottom on Yud Aleph on the base 11b. Amar Mar, we learned Hayasasam Upikesh Lepaisrai. Okay, so what happened was there was somebody had a we explained the concept of a mavli. Mavli is sort of a very large central public area which is open to multiple smaller courtyards. And one of the features of a mavli is that there's a single point of access. It's good for security purposes. Now there were two. You think of this as sort of a gated community. Although we'll see, not every mavli was gated necessarily. We'll soon see if the mavli wasn't gated, you can't put up a gate. You can't sort of restrict public access. We'll get to that shortly. What happened was, so here you have one guy's accessing one mavli, and there's two mavlis that were built adjacent to each other. And now he opens his door to the other mavli, and he closes the door to the first mavli. And now he wants to reopen the door that was closed. So what's the halacha? The people that the mavi which has the closed door, the door meaning closed, meaning like we'll explain more detail, but it's sort of like boarded up. It might even be more than boarded up. He put bricks in the doorway. So he's still allowed to reopen the door. Okay, what's the critical factor? This is only if he wasn't paratz et patzimav. What does that mean? So, basically, when you build a door, there's a door frame, so that the studs of the building are aligned, so that you have a frame of a door. So if you fill the door with bricks, that does not destroy the door. It's only when you take down the frame, you put regular studs to support the structure. At that point, we say no. This is a permanent change. You can't just reopen again, because the door frame was filled with bricks. They realize there's a door frame there, and they expect the possibility that one day he'll reopen the frame. Or if it's boarded up, something similar to that. But once he knocks down the door frame and he finishes it flat and flush with the rest of the house, so then we say that no, he cannot reopen it. We have a Bryce that supports your opinion. Okay, if you have a closed house, so then you get 4 amas. We explained yesterday that when you divide up a courtyard amongst two partners, so they split it equally, but each one gets dollar by dollar, about 36 square feet for his for donkey parking, right? Donkey parking. So even if the house is sealed up, meaning you have bricks in the door, you still get donkey parking, except once you knock down the door frame, you don't get the donkey parking anymore. The closed door frame has the expectation will be reopened, and therefore entitles you to donkey parking. But if not, you don't get the donkey parking, and you get you get nothing at all in terms of per entrance. Bias sosum. Okay, this is an interesting one. Okay, the general rule of a house is that the tumah comes out from the entrance. Meaning, let's say you have a house with a dead body inside the house. So the lintel and the threshold of the house, they're tamei. Why? And by the way, they're tamei even if they're sealed up, because the expectation is that they'll be broken to take the mace out of the house, take the dead body out of the house. However, so by itself, and you have a closed house, ain't a matama called svivov. If you have the house has a doorway, but the doorway is stuffed with bricks, then only the doorway is tamei. The rest of the house, it's not, the house itself is not tamei. You touch the house, you're not tamei. But let's say the guy seals the house. This is like a crypt. I don't know how you describe it. It's like a house with no doors. It's like a monument, right?
Like a tomb.
A tomb, exactly. So it has the status of a tomb. And now, if you touch the house, it's as if you touch the tomb, which makes it tamei. It's a house that has a door with bricks in the door. The house itself is not tamei, only the lintel and the doorway. But once you knock down the doorway, now you have a monument, basically a no door house. then you get then the entire house becomes the tomb, and that the whole house becomes tummy. Or it's spatzima matamikol sivav, the whole house becomes tummy if there's a dead body inside. So this is an interesting one. You have two cities that are next to each other, and they're connected by a mavoi that's mefulish. A mavoi that's mefulish means it has entrance ways on both sides. So a typical mavoi only has one entrance. This one has two. And what's interesting about this entranceway is that it connects two cities. And one of the cities decides, you know what, it's a security hazard. They want to close up the fence. The other city can restrict that choice. You can tell them you cannot close it. This is certainly the case if there's only one route from city to city, and that is through the Mavi. Then certainly there's no other route. Of course, they can demand that the Mavi stay open. But even if there is an alternate route, the city that has established the route, they can restrict the other city from closing it up. And the reason for this is Mishum Rabbi Yehudah Amarav, because of Rabbi Yehudah Amarav said, Amar, Rabbi Yehudah Amarav, Meitzar Shehefsik by Rabbim Otzer L'Kalkalei. This is a very important law that if the community chooses a shortcut, you cannot close it up. So I remember my grandfather used to daven in a certain shul in Flatbush, or Frankel shul, and the way if you're in Flatbush, the houses are built in very tight rows, and generally speaking, there's sort of a garage and a strong fence separating row to row. So in order to move from a house on one street to the house on the neighboring street, you have to walk to the avenue and walk around. You can't walk through the driveways. They're all fenced in. Now, because it was a shul, so a guy decided to open his backyard. So he had a driveway. His driveway was back to back with the shul. So he opened a fence in his backyard. And at some point he wanted to sell the house and told him they can't close it. Once you establish this fence, and everybody uses it now, every Shabbos, instead of walking around the long way, everyone would go cut through the short way. You can't close it. Eventually the shul did renovations, and then they made it would be irrelevant at that point, because the new building closed up that area. And at that point, he just closed his fence, and nobody was able to get through it.
We had similar thing here.
With the Stevens Creek.
Sorry? No, to Stevens, to the precursor to Stevens Creek. You can still see the remnants of the pathway. And there was a walkway there, and people used to come through before. And one day even we put up two posts with a arrow, and it got torn down by the people because they thought we were going to close it off. And then when they rebuilt Stevens Creek Crossing,
Right.
when they did this new development, they designed it so that there was no pathway. So that's how we could close it off. But for the first, I don't know, 5-6 years of being here.
Interesting. Okay, so this is the rule that we're learning about. That basically, once you establish this route, you can't close it off. Also, if the congregation chooses a route, then that's it. You have to. Now you could obviously stop the route from happening. You can put up signs, no trespassing, and don't let people move. But once you allow it, it's too late. It becomes public, and the same thing is true of this Mavoi. So it's connected to both cities. People are using the Mavoi to travel through, even though technically it's it's one of those local access only roads. But people started driving through it. That's it. It's too bad. Okay, so this one is the Mavoi is connected to a major thoroughfare. So they decide, you know what? They're not interested in the public coming into their private community that's attached to a busy thoroughfare. So they decide they want to put up gates. The people that live in the public domain, they can stop them from putting up gates. Okay, so the Gemara says, initially, we thought the way it works is you have a very large central courtyard, which is attached to a bunch of smaller courtyards with one point of access. Because it's connected to a thoroughfare, so people push their way in. The things are busy on the street. They'll take a break and go into the private property for a second. So now, typically they use the first 6 feet of the property. But so he thought that the restriction to build a fence would only be within the first 6 feet. If they set the fence back 6 feet, it would be permitted. The forearm is close to the public property, is like the public property. But it's not the case. One second. Yeah. Okay. In other words, the first 6 feet, that rule applies to tumah, meaning the general principle of tumah, of a question of impurity, is that if it's found in the public domain, a suffix, a question of doubt, is tahar. It's pure. The first 6 feet of a mavoi that's connected to a public domain is considered that area. Any suffix is tahar. However, with regard to the laws of closing off an area the public has begun to use, the entire mavoi now is taken over by the public. You can't gate off any portion of it. Meaning you have this mavoi built adjacent to a busy thoroughfare. People start hanging out there. Now you can't close it off.
So if you built it.
So had you built it with a fence, that'd be fine. Yeah. Yeah, 1 second. Okay, yeah. If you have a field, you want to cut up the field, the minimum size is 9 kav. 9 kav, a yield of 9 kav for each of the partners. And Rabbi Yehudah says, no, it's 4.5 kav. And the Gemara says, v'loi pli, there's no debate here. Maraki asri and Maraki asri. There was a different minimum yield in different towns. Certain towns, the labor costs were much more. They want, so they were able, they needed more space to profit. And some towns it was cheaper, so even less space was, even a lower yield was still profitable. Okay, so now that we know that different towns have different minimum quantities of yield, split up a field, what is the minimum quantity in Bavel? The Bavel Mai. Amar Yosef says Beirodu Yoma. The amount of the minimum size of the field is the amount of field that's plowed in 1 day. So the Gemara says, 1 second. My Beirodu Yoma. What exactly does that mean? Okay, so there are 2 times of plowing. There is the time of the plowing. There's the time of the planting. So you plowed the field when the ground was a little bit harder. So it took a longer time to plow the field. And then you plowed it again when you sowed it. But at that point, the ground was much more moist. It's much easier to plow. So which is it? If it was a plowing in the time of sowing, then that isn't 2 days during in the pre-sowing, in the first plow. Because the first plow took about 1.5 to 1 3/4 the amount of time as the plowing during sowing. If it's a day of plowing during the first plow, then it would be less than a full day of plowing during the sowing plowing, during the second plowing. So sort of which plowing is he referring to? So the Gemara basically resolves that it's actually 1 or 2 days or 1.5 a day. They're actually half of each other, and it's one of these numbers. Let's see. One possibility is Yoma de Karaba. It's the first plow. Okay, and we're talking about a place, the Karavatani. We're talking about a location. 1 second here. Let me make sure I have this. 1 second. Okay, I'm actually going to prefer the version here of Rashi, the second version of Rashi. So I believe what the art school uses as well. It's slightly different in the textual variant that we have printed. Okay, let me just read here. Okay. Yeah, 1 second. Yeah. Hold on a second. Okay. So if you want to see it, it's in Rashi. We're looking at the word beginning with the Ibai saying the second half of Rashi after the two dots. Rashi says Lishna Achrena Ipchik Sinan. Okay, Ibai saying about Yomi de Karba. We're talking about the first sowing. Udikashalach, and the question is Yomi de Zara Lehava. It isn't even a day of plowing during the sowing. Ba'asr de Karavatani b'Shas Zara. Achas Kaidon Zriya ba'achas Achas Zriya. Okay. Look. So basically what they did was in this town they would plow once before the sowing, and when they would sow, they would plow the field twice in a day. Because the ground was easier to carve up, so the double plowing actually took the same amount of time as the single plow in the pre-plowing season. In the first plowing when the ground was harder. Another possibility is Yom Zara. It was one day of plowing during the sowing season. It wouldn't even take 2 days. It would take less than 2 days during the first plow. Bahaduri askinon. 1 second. Yeah, where the land was very dry and firm. So 1 day of plowing during the sowing would actually equal 2 days of plowing during the first plow. Okay, regardless. Okay, so this is the measurement of how much it is. Okay, now let's say you have a field that has to be watered, and there is a pit, a cistern that holds water. Davla, how much water in there to be able to split it for two people? What's the minimum quantity of a cistern that's useful, right? If obviously it's a tiny cistern, it's not useful. What's the minimum useful quantity? Rav Nachman, Beidalu Yomi Pardesa. 1 day of watering a pardes. A pardes is an orchard. Okay, 1 second. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry, mistake. It's the amount of watering that will be needed for the field for 1 day. Right. We are in other words, so they're dividing up a field with I misspoke here. They're dividing up a field with a cistern. There has to be enough field and enough cistern that each of them can hire a worker to water their field for a full day. It doesn't make sense to hire a laborer to water a field for less than a day. So that's the minimum quantity. Pardesa, let's say he gets a orchard or vineyard. Omer Avod Shmuel bas shloishes kaven. It has to yield at least 3 kav. Tanya Nami Hachi, we have a bryce that states similarly. I'm giving you a portion of my vineyard. What's the minimum quantity of a portion? He has to give a minimum amount that will yield 3 kav. Amr Vyasi ain't able different vias. Vyasi says this must be words of prophecy. There's no sort of reason. There's no reasoning behind this. It's prophetic insight. It wasn't what We'll soon see. The Gemara will head off on a tangent. Now here's the volume there. The Gemara will head off on a tangent now for a moment about prophecy and about wisdom. But for now, this is a slight critique. It's like, what are you talking about? You're saying that there's 3 kav. Why would that be the number? Mm-hmm. It's like as if it's a prophetic insight. Where would you pull such a number from? Yeah, exactly. He felt it was arbitrary. Okay, what about in Bavel? What's the yield, the minimum yield of a vineyard there? It's 3 measurements of atziyasas. So the vineyard was divided up into units called an atziyasa. And each of those had been a tracer gufni. It had 12 vines. Again, so you have 3 units, each of these units carrying 12 vines. So that one person can sort of plow around the vines in 1 day. Okay. Now that we're talking about prophecy, so we sort of get into a tangent here. Amr of Dimi ben Chayfa. From the day the temple was destroyed, we're on the bottom of Yud Beis and Aleph. Nitlo nevuah min hanaviyim v'nitno lechachamim. prophecy was taken from the prophets and given to the wise. Now, this seems to be an insulting comment. This seems to imply that prophets weren't wise, right? So the Gemara says, is it possible that if you're wise, that's an exclusionary criteria that you cannot be a prophet? Of course, many of the prophets were very wise. What does it mean it was taken from the prophets and given to the wise? As if there were no wise prophets? Of course there were wise prophets. So the Gemara says, this is what the Bryce needs to say. Even though prophecy was taken from the wise, even though prophecy was taken from the prophets, from the wise, there still is some vestige of prophecy. Amar says, and in a certain context, in certain ways, it's better for a person to be wise than to be prophetic. Why is this? Shneimer, the verse states, V'novi, and a prophet, levav chachma, he has a heart of wisdom. Mi nitla b'mi, have you ever cut nitla b'godl? You know, if you want to give an example of like this guy's house has so much food, it has as much food as a restaurant. Okay, well, 1 second. So which has more food, a restaurant or a house? The fact that you compare a house to a restaurant tells you that what? The restaurant is a place where all the food is. So when you this verse, by the way, is very homiletic. This is not the simple explanation of the verse. That's a side point. Navi here doesn't mean a prophet; it means it will bring. But okay, like as in Yavai, to bring, ba, to come. Okay, whatever. That's a side point. But regardless, the fact that we're comparing a prophet to a wise man, it means that the paradigm is the wise. The wise carry with them the body of wisdom, not the prophets. That's how we have to compare the prophet, as much wisdom in the prophet as there are in the wise. Like comparing the food in the house to the restaurant. Obviously, it's the restaurant that has much more food than the house. Okay. Omar Abaya says, I'll prove it to you. Teda. Okay, the Gemara goes through a number of proofs. None of these really stand scrutiny. I'll prove to you that there is prophecy among the wise, because what happens, this is very common, two wise people, they come up with the exact same idea independently, right? I believe you have this with the telephone. Is that right? I think the two people came up with the telephone at the same time. Alexander Graham Bell
There's some discussion.
and somebody else. No, but I think that everyone would agree that they discovered it. Forget about who. The question that starts is who had it first. But I think everyone agrees that independently they discovered how to make a telephone.
Right.
So it means that two great people, two wise people, each of them is trying to find the telephone, and they both independently came up with this idea. Okay.
Graham Bell wasn't actually trying to devise a telephone.
Oh, that could be.
I think he was working on more like hearing aid type things.
Oh, okay.
Something to help the deaf.
Oh.
Okay, so you have this idea where two wise people come up with the exact same idea. So that clearly shows there's some amount of prophetic insight there. Sarava says in my kasha, maybe there are people that think in similar ways. So they were born in the same zodiac and they have similar ways of thinking. So obviously they reach similar conclusions. Rava says, I'll give you another example. Teda. The Omer Gava Rabba Milsa. So there's a great man that says an idea. Umis Amrit Mishmeid Rabbi Kiva Bar Yosef. So obviously Rabbi Kiva Bar Yosef, he's among probably the foremost scholar of the Mishnayos.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Obviously Rebbe wrote it down, but Rabbi Kiva is certainly the foremost scholar of Mishnayos. His students are clearly the critical authors of basically every major disagreement within Mishnayos. Not everyone, but the vast majority. So you have a great scholar, and he doesn't know necessarily what every single statement of Rabbi Kiva, but he comes up with the same ideas. Now, clearly, what is it about Rabbi Kiva? Why did he think of these ideas? Not because of his mazel, not because of the zodiac he was born in, but because he was an immense, incredible scholar. Right? This is a scholar, by the way, that Moshe Rabbeinu was jealous of. Moshe Rabbeinu saw the scholarship of Rabbi Kiva, and he said to God, basically, he was jealous of Rabbi Kiva. Right, he wanted to be as bunch of a scholar as Rabbi Kiva. Okay, Talmud says God calmed him down because Rabbi Kiva said that everything ultimately goes back to Moses, to Moshe Rabbeinu. Regardless, the greatest scholar said, and we see that independent scholars have the same ideas as Rabbi Kiva. That's a proof of this sort of independent prophecy that streaks through all wise people, wise Torah scholars. So Amar Vashi, my kasha, he says, that doesn't prove the point. Dilmo lav laha milsa bar mazlihu. Maybe in that specific area, they have a similar mazel. They think similarly. In other words, each scholar in his area of expertise, he thinks similarly. He shares a zodiac with Rabbi Kiva. They have a similar method of thought. There are great scholars that come up with ideas, and these ideas are the same ideas that Moshe Rabbeinu has said at Sinai. Some of these traditions were lost, and scholars who forgot the traditions will independently come up with those same ideas. So Gemara says, well, is that really much of a proof? Dilma Kasuma Ba'aruba. Maybe it's like a blind man who finds a window, right? It's happenstance. Right? They say if you get 1 million monkeys to write for 1 million years, you get all the words of Shakespeare. I don't know if that's true or not, but presumably it isn't, probably. I'd have to guess. Whatever. Okay, but there could be two blind people that end up meeting each other. It could happen. So the Gemara says, no. V'lav tam ka'amar. They're giving the reasoning. They're giving the same reasoning. So it's not like they're blind because they're giving a reasoning behind it. The fact that an idea can originate in a contemporary scholar who, obviously this is at the time of the Talmud, who did not know of the tradition of Moshe Rabbeinu, and then he finds out that actually Moshe Rabbeinu transmitted the same tradition, that clearly shows there's a thread of unified knowledge that's shared prophetically between scholars. It's not a prophecy. It's not like God came to him and told him some sort of secret, but it shows that there's some sort of prophetic insight that's shared by scholars. Okay, now we get a very interesting thing, and this is something that a lot of people talk about today. Amar V'Yechanan. From the day that the temple was destroyed, prophecy was removed from scholars, and it was given to shaitim. These are people that are what do they call these people? Psychotically deranged people. Children. These are people that aren't connected to reality, and to children. So Gemara wants to illustrate each of these examples, the shaitim, to people that are deranged. Mahi, how do we see that? The son of Rav Ashi, he was standing around the marketplace of Mechuzah. Mechuzah is the name of a town. He heard this deranged person, the Ka'amar, he said, the leader of the congregation of the study hall in Masa Mechasya, a neighboring town, he signs his name Tav-Yomi. Right? Now at the time there was a different scholar who led the Masifta, who led the study hall. And Rav Ashi was very confused by the statement. He says, Man Chasam Tav-Yomi, B'Rabbanan, which scholar signs his name Tav-Yomi? It's me, I know. I sign my name Tav-Yomi. Evidently, this is a prophetic insight that there's a good time for me to become the leader of the study hall in Masa Mechasya. So what did he do? Come also. So he decided to go and head toward Masa Mechasya. Ada also, as he was getting there, the rabbis of the study hall decided to declare Rav Acha from the town of Difti as the lead scholar. But then they heard the rumors that Rav Ashi is en route. So they said, 1 second, it's not appropriate. He's en route. He's probably thinking of applying to the position. We have to consult with him and ask him how exactly we should approach Rav Acha. So sort of giving him differential respect, but we're not giving him the job. Right? And as we're consulting with the second rabbi to ask him how to give the first rabbi the honor. But they weren't really offering the job to Rav Acha. So they sent 2 scholars to go consult with him. So Rav Ashi heard the 2 scholars. He told them to wait. So they didn't get a response. So he sent another pair of scholars to go consult with him. So he kept them with him. He didn't let them leave. Eventually, they sent 10 scholars. There were 5 peers of students, 10 scholars. Kiv the Mola Be'asar. Once he had 10 scholars in his room, he started giving the shir. He started leading the congregation of 10 scholars that had approached him from Masa Mechasya. You can only become the leader of the congregation, give the formal lecture, when you have 10 scholars present. So he usurped the position of being the leader. once he basically gave the lead lecture, the formal lecture, so then they weren't going to demote him, so they let him keep the position. Okay, Kar Ravacha Nashe, so Ravacha said on himself, Kollel Marian Loi, somebody who has bad stuff happen to him, Loi Meher Mativan Loi. His fortunes don't immediately turn around. The Kollel Mativan Loi, and whoever got good fortune, Loi Meher Marian Loi, they don't immediately do bad to him. Okay, meaning Ravacha Medifti recognized that Rashi usurped the position, and he had lost it. He was not going to get it. Okay, Tinoikis Mahi. What's the story of the Tinoikis children? They have prophetic insight. Mahi, what's the story? It's a scary story. The daughter of Chizda Haviyasa Bekanfid Avua. She was sitting on her father's lap, and her father had scholars, and he was talking to the scholars. Haviyasa Kamei, the two scholars were Rava and Rami Bar Chama. Amar, so he said to her, Man minaya bayas, which scholar do you want to marry? Okay, bad response here. Amar le Travayu, both of them. So Amar Rava, so Rava immediately piped up and he said, Va'ano basra, I'd like to be second. Okay, now, and that's what happened. Now, why did Rami Bar Chama not respond? It's very interesting because the Gemara says, it's an interesting story, Gemara in the Pesachim, Naf Kuf Yud Beis, Rav Shimon Bar Yochai and Rabbi Kiva, and Rav Shimon Bar Yochai went to visit Rabbi Kiva in prison. Rabbi Kiva was in prison for teaching Torah, and he demanded Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, again, one of the students of Rabbi Kiva, right after he lost 24,000 students, he had 5 Talmidim, one of them was Rav Shimon Bar Yochai. So Rav Shimon Bar Yochai went to study with him in prison. So Rabbi Kiva was very afraid to teach him. He was afraid they're going to kill him on the spot. So he said, I'm not teaching you. So Rav Shimon Bar Yochai said, if you don't teach me, then I'm going to tattle on you. I'm going to have my father tattle on you. Yochai. It's an interesting threat. Okay, whatever. So he agreed to teach him. One of the things he taught him was, don't marry a divorcee. Why? 2 opinions. One opinion is while the husband's still alive, because there are 4. This is 2 divorcees marrying each other. Why? Because there are 4 opinions in the beds, meaning because each of them is thinking about the other ones, and the other opinion is even don't even marry an almana, a widow, or a divorcee whose husband has passed away. And that's because her intimate experiences with her first husband may have a detrimental impact on her potentially on her second husband, because he might not meet the first husband's standards. Okay. Regardless, Rami Bar Chama did not want to marry either divorcee, or he certainly didn't want to marry a divorcee, and didn't want to curse Rava by having to die early. So Rami Bar Chama did not respond. Rava, on the other hand, was willing to marry a divorcee. What's interesting, though, I believe, is that Rava ended up divorcing Basra Chizda. That's the Basra Chizda's name is not mentioned in the Talmud. She's always called the daughter of Chizda. I believe that's the story that happened in Brachas in the Nuns, with the famous story of Bar Hadaya, the interpreter of dreams. And Rava refused to pay him, so he gave him a very negative interpretation. And one of the interpretations of his dreams was he was going to divorce his wife. And Abaye gave him a coin. Abaye had the most rosiest interpretations of his dreams. And in the end, Rava ended up divorcing the daughter of Chizda, I believe. Okay. Amr Rav Dimi min Haifa. Rav Dimi from Haifa says, before a person eats and drinks, he has 2 hearts. He feels lost. He doesn't have, his body isn't collected together. His body comes together after he eats and drinks. Shenemar, as the verse states, Ish nivuv ilaviv. A person who's nivuv, he has multiple hearts. He has ilaviv, many hearts. What does nivuv mean? Uksev nivuv luchais. U'metargamin chalil luchan. The luchais are called nivuv. What does that mean? It means that they're hollow. Nivuv is a word that's used for hollow, meaning if a person's stomach is hollow, it's empty, he's hungry, so then he has multiple hearts. As they say, the brain doesn't operate when the stomach is empty. Okay. Rav Huna says in the name of Rabbi Yeshua, Harogel b'yayin. If a person drinks wine, he's Harogel is not just drink. It's he's familiar with wine. Wine is a staple for him. Even if he has a heart that's very closed, like a psul, like a virgin, like a woman who never had a relationship. Yayin mifakhay, wine will open up his heart. Shenamar, as the verse states, the tirosh and wine, yinuvav besulais, it will open up the heart of a besula of a virgin. Okay, let's begin. Rav Huna B'Rei Yeshua. Rav Huna says the name of Rabbi Shua again. So, like we spoke yesterday, Masechta is Masechta of Shutfin, partnerships, right? We're talking about how to cut up partnerships now. So in the Mishnah, we spoke about different types of fields and houses. Two people own a property together. They want to end the relationship. By the way, tomorrow we'll begin with the shotgun clause. You're familiar with that? So a lot of partnerships have what they call a shotgun clause. At any point, one partner could make a shotgun clause to his other partner. He can offer him a buyout offer, and his partner can take the buyout offer and buy him out. Oh. So it's a very risky maneuver. So you put the offer. We'll get to it tomorrow. Very interesting discussion. Okay, but for now we have a question. So you have chelik b'chor and chelik poshet. Okay, so you have the general principle for inheritance is that the sons split the inheritance equally. The b'chor, the firstborn, if there's a firstborn son, the firstborn son gets an extra portion. So let's say there are 6 sons. One of them is a firstborn. We divide the property into 7 portions, and the b'chor takes 2 of them. Now, let's say we have a lot of different properties, 7 different properties. 2 of them border each other. Does the b'chor have a right to take those 2 that border each other? So you consider it as it's 2 individual portions, or do we say no, it's one big portion that's the size of 2 portions? But he's entitled to get the same border. We give him one border, meaning we give him properties that are adjacent to each other. Okay. However, there's another law. Let's say you have the same 6 sons, okay? No firstborn, let's say. The girl's the oldest. By the way, as a side point, obviously today it's highly recommended people write wills just because to make things easier in the family. However, even in a will, there is supposed to be some, if a person has an oldest son, there's supposed to be some remembrance of the laws of Bechor. The person has to give his son an extra something because he's a Bechor. Now, we have an interesting rule here, which is the rule of Yavam. Let's say, so you have these 6 sons. So one of the sons, again, the oldest is a daughter, so there's no Bechor here. One of the sons dies without kids. So there's Yibum. The next son does Yibum. What happens is he gets not only his own inheritance of his father, when his father does, he also gets the deceased brother's inheritance. He gets a double portion. Okay, is that double portion 2 individual portions, or is it one portion that's the size of 2? So Bechor, the eldest firstborn, we say he gets one portion the size of 2. What about the Yavam? What's his story? Samar Bai, it's the same story. My time, Bechor Kari Rachmana, the verse calls him a Bechor. Again, this is a very homiletic interpretation of the verse. Rava says, Amar Krava Haya Bechor, have Yasik Bechor, Ve'en Chalakasik Bechor. Rava says, no. You get an inheritance like a Bechor. I'm sorry. You have first dips on marrying, meaning the oldest son is always the one that has priority for Yibum. Yibum is given to the oldest son. However, you don't get the portion like a Bechor, meaning you get 2 separate portions. You don't share a border. It's not like a Bechor gets 2 portions on one border. It's one big property. But a Yavam does not get 2 portions on one border. He gets 2 individual portions wherever they may be. Okay, stop here. See you tomorrow. Okay, great thing. We'll see everyone at 1:30. 1:30. See him. Oh, you can come at 12. Sure. Yeah, if you want to come early, feel free.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, we'll probably stop setting up, so feel free to come. Sorry?
1:30?
1:30. No, it's the participants.
Is it?